Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander.
And welcome to another episode of our card spotlight series in which I highlight a card that I think should see more play in Commander. But before that, just a quick reminder to click subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and your support means everything to me. And today we're going to be talking about Dire Fleet Daredevil. For 1 colorless and 1 red, it's a creature human pirate 2/1 with first strike, and when Dire Fleet Daredevil enters the battlefield, exile target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. You may cast it this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. If that spell would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So I have a friend that plays a pirate deck quite often, and he plays this card in that deck, and it is a really solid card that I'm always impressed with, and it always seems to overperform and do more than you'd expect. The obvious comparison is to something like Snapcaster Mage. It's a fairly similar card in some ways and very different in some others. The first difference is it doesn't have flash. It trades that in for first strike, which is a much better ability when it comes to combat, but obviously the flash is pretty important in Snapcaster because you can just flash it in and play something without your opponents seeing it coming at the end of their step or even counter a spell. You're obviously not going to be able to do any of that with Dire Fleet Daredevil. Time-sensitive cards that need to be cast at instant speed are unfortunately not going to be great with this card, but the trade-off is you're getting a body that can hold off any 2 toughness creature, which is really solid, and it can attack in a few board states as well. Another difference with Snapcaster Mage is that of course you're using cards from an opponent's graveyard instead of from your own. That means that it's very difficult to guarantee what you're going to be getting with this, which does mean that there is a much bigger delta between when this card is bad and this card is good. Sometimes your opponents are going to have some amazing things in the graveyard that you can steal, and sometimes they're not going to have that much stuff at all, or the stuff that they're going to have isn't going to be super impactful. However, in general, you're usually going to get something pretty good with this. Even if you're just getting something like Rampant Growth, that's still pretty good. Getting a Rampant Growth in red, and for 4 mana, you're basically building your own Solemn Simulacrum minus the card draw. If there's already been a board wipe this game, but it needs to be wiped again, this card is excellent because you're just going to get to wipe the board. And if you're doing something like Blasphemous Act or something along those lines, you're still going to get to rebuild first, which is very nice. Rebuying removal is obviously excellent as well, and it's a great way for red to get access to enchantment removal, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily normally have in the color. With this card, you just get to remove enchantments if somebody has an enchantment removal spell in the graveyard, which does happen quite often. Outside of that, there are some excellent big spells that you can steal. The classic one is Expropriate, although if Expropriate is in the graveyard and the game hasn't ended, something is definitely up. Extra turn spells, on the other hand, are something very good that you often end up finding in opponent's graveyard. As anyone is playing blue, that seems very good. There's really all sorts of possibilities for this card, and it's a much better card, a much more flexible card than it might seem at first glance, because you think, oh, I have to pay the mana? This doesn't seem that good. But Snapcaster Mage requires you to pay the mana, and it's still a very good card. So what kind of decks is this going to be best in? Well, as I mentioned, it's really good in mono red because you're going to have access to stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be getting, such as enchantment removal. Other decks that it's going to be good in are decks that are interested in milling your opponent's graveyard. There's quite a few of those these days that want you to be filling up their graveyard via either having them mill or just countering their spells or in any other way. If you're filling up the opponent's graveyard, then it becomes more likely that they're going to have something that you can steal, which means that this card is going to be much better. I also really like it in my kind of jokey chaos decks, the decks where you want unpredictable stuff to happen and every game to be different. This card is definitely going to contribute to that because you're going to get to cast a lot of different spells every game. Finally, it's obviously very good in pirate decks, which are decks that often want to be stealing opponents' things anyway, and this has first strike, which means it can get in quite nicely as a pirate. So if your deck meets any of those categories, I suggest giving this guy a try because it's a really solid card. So there you have it. Those have been my thoughts on this new spoiler. What do you think about this card? Please let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care. Woo!